All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest questions of all time, but we're looking at it through a really cool scientific lens. We are going to unpack a fascinating debate on free will between two astrophysicists. And believe me, it might just change how you think about every single choice you make.
So let me ask you this. How much control do you really have? I mean, when you decide what you're going to have for lunch, are you actually freely making that choice? Or are you just a passenger, watching a chain reaction unfold that started, well, long before you were even born? That's the huge question at the heart of what we're talking about today.
Okay, so first up, let's explore the argument that free will might not be real at all. Yeah, this viewpoint comes straight from the world of physics, and it suggests that our whole sense of freedom could be this incredibly powerful, but ultimately persistent illusion.
So the argument, and this is championed by the physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, it all starts with a basic rule of the universe, causality, right? Every single thing that happens is a direct result of something that happened just before it. And if you trace that chain of cause and effect all the way back, you realize that every action today was basically set in motion by how the universe was yesterday, and the day before that, all the way back to the Big Bang itself. You know, when you follow that logic, it leads Tyson to this pretty stark conclusion. If every single thought and every action is just another domino falling in this unbreakable chain, where does real, actual choice even fit in? From a physics perspective, there's just not much room for it.
And what's really fascinating here is how Tyson backs up this physics-based idea with stuff from biology and neuroscience. He points out that as we've learned more and more about what makes us tick, our whole idea of pure, free choice has been getting chipped away piece by piece.
I mean, think about it. We used to blame people for having seizures. We thought they were possessed or something. Now we know it's epilepsy. We're learning that addiction has this incredibly powerful biochemical grip, and that conditions like depression or being on the autism spectrum, these are not choices people are making. They're biological realities that fundamentally shape and constrain behavior.
And this brings us to a really chilling, tragic example. Charles Whitman, the man who was the shooter at the University of Texas back in 1966, he left this note. He felt these impulses that he just couldn't control. And later, an autopsy found he had a brain tumor pressing on his amygdala, the part of the brain that handles fear and aggression. So, did he really have the free will to not do what he did? It's a deeply, deeply unsettling question.
But come on, that can't be the whole story, right? It just feels like we have choices. So let's look at the counter-argument. And this comes from another astrophysicist, Charles Liu. He suggests that, yeah, our actions might feel determined in the heat of the moment, but that true free will, that's something we exercise long before, in how we prepare.
So Charles Liu makes this absolutely crucial distinction. He argues that our past experiences don't require a specific outcome. They don't lock us onto a single track. No, instead, they inform our decisions. They basically load our brains with a whole menu of options that we can pull from in a split second. And he uses this fantastic analogy. Think of a quarterback in a football game. When a 300-pound lineman is barreling down on him, that last-second juke to the left is pure reflex. It's totally automatic. There's no time to sit and think about it. But what about the years and years he spent practicing, day after day, intentionally preloading those reflexes into his brain? That, Liu argues, was an exercise of free will.
And that right there is the core of his whole argument. Free will isn't just about that one instantaneous decision. It's about the conscious, long-term work we put in to shape who we're going to be and how we're going to react in the future. You're choosing the kind of person you'll become, even if your reactions in the moment feel like they're on autopilot.
Now, what's really cool is this idea of exercising will through preparation. It doesn't just stop with individuals. You can actually scale it up to the level of a whole society, and it helps us think about how entire communities can make choices to shape their collective future. This leads to a pretty profound social question, doesn't it? We know for a fact there are powerful sociological forces, like poverty, that make it dramatically more likely that someone will end up in the criminal justice system. So if a person's options are that heavily constrained right from birth, how free were their choices, really?
And this is exactly where that idea of a collective will comes in. See, as a society, we can choose to respond with compassion. A system of restorative justice is a perfect example of this. It's a collective choice to say, hey, instead of just punishment, let's focus on rehabilitation. Let's help people whose individual will might have been compromised by their circumstances. It's a choice to change the system itself.
So, here we are. We've got two really compelling but kind of opposite views. On one hand, physics seems to determine everything.
On the other, we exercise our will through long-term preparation. So, where do we land? Well, this is where the two debaters found this really beautiful and honestly brilliant point of agreement.
Instead of a simple yes or no answer, they propose this concept called the perimeter of ignorance. Just picture it as the frontier of human knowledge. It's this line that separates everything we currently understand about the forces that constrain us from the vast, mysterious unknown, what we don't know yet. So inside this perimeter, you've got all the deterministic forces we can actually identify. The laws of physics, our neurochemistry, powerful social pressures. But outside that perimeter, well, that's the great unknown. And it's out there in that space where science can't yet explain things that true unconstrained free will might just exist.
And here's the absolute key. That perimeter isn't fixed. It's not a wall. As science gets better, as we learn more, that boundary moves. We're constantly pulling things from the outside, the unknown, to the inside, the known. So what this means is the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's all about our constantly evolving understanding of who we are.
And this brings us to the profound human takeaway from this whole debate. As that perimeter of ignorance shrinks, as we begin to understand more about all of the biological and social forces that shape people's lives, Tyson argues that it demands something from us. It demands that we as a society become more compassionate. We can't just keep blaming people for outcomes they might not have had full control over.
And that leaves us with one last essential thought to chew on. This entire conversation, from the laws of physics all the way to brain chemistry, it's not just some abstract academic exercise. It forces us to ask a really deep ethical question. If our choices are constrained in all these ways we're just now starting to understand, what does that mean for how we treat each other? What's our responsibility to build a world that gives everyone the best possible chance?